If you think about all of your communication channels, whether it's creating a blog, great. Some people like to write, but how hard is it to write a blog every week or to get that message out and to do all of these things? And when you get busy, very hard. I don't care how talented of a writer you are. It's very hard to stay consistent with that messaging. Same thing with, traditional social media, doing posts, all these other things, even just the approval side of things of doing the distribution, very difficult to be consistent over time, which that's what you really need to be successful in whatever you're doing, whether it's raising money, whether it's your company, you're in something other than raising money or real estate or business. If you don't have consistency in the marketplace, then people aren't going to take you necessarily quite as serious.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
Welcome to another amazing episode of Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Conner, your host, also known as the Private Money Authority. And you know, if you've been tuning into the show, that I have amazing guests that join me. And today is no exception. My special guest today, first of all, he is the host of the Mission Matters series of shows. And his shows are ranked in the top 5% out of 3,289,799 podcasts globally. And by the way, that's not a self-proclaimed statistic. That actually is an independent third-party ranking index by Listen Notes. So his podcast, Knock It Out of the Park. I've been a guest on his podcast. He is an amazing interviewer, and you're going to find out in a second how he's an amazing guest. Well, he is the co-founder of Mission Matters. That's a media, public relations, branding, book publishing agency. And quite frankly, he's dedicated to amplifying the voices of entrepreneurs, entertainers, executives, and all the different kinds of experts. Well, in addition to that, he is an international speaker. He's an author of all kinds of books on business and investing, and he's been featured in just about every magazine that you can imagine. Now, prior to his career of establishing Mission Matters, he had more than 14 years experience in financial services, and he actually had a roster of clientele that included over 1,000 business owners, 3,000 high net worth families. And right before kicking off Mission Matters, he was actually had relationship management over 400 families that had a cumulative net worth, can you believe, of over $500 million. In just a moment, you're going to meet my very, very special guest, Mr. Adam Torres, right after this. Well, Adam, welcome to the show.
Man, Jay, I am so excited to be here. I'm like, with that intro, I feel like I'm walking into the boxing ring or something, Madison Square Garden. Come on, this is the main event. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. It is a main event because you, my friend, I was on your show. It was an amazing experience. And you, for goodness sakes, you have recorded over 6,000 podcast episodes. You've built just this amazing, network, the businesses you've got going on. I mean, why did you get started in podcasting, and why are you still doing it?
I'd like to say it's because I'm a bit of a pleaser. So I think initially it was, I didn't want to tell people no. I mean, it's kind of, none of this was planned. I was managing money, as you said in the intro. I was a financial advisor. I was pretty comfortable. I wasn't a $1 billion guy, but I worked pretty hard over the 14 years that I was in that game. And I started this podcast. I launched a book, and the requests to be on on the show started, rising. They just started rising. So at one point, I think we had, it just really started. I didn't want to tell people no. I think at one point we had something like 50 episodes that we are backlogged. And I told my team, I'm like, hey, we can't like invite somebody on the show and then tell them, hey, your episode's going to be released in a year. So quite frankly, one day I didn't have an answer. I was just praying on it. I'm like, God, I don't know what to do. Like you're, giving, this type of platform and things. I didn't really know what to do. It wasn't my background. And I told my team, I said, you know what? Release them all. And I was like, I'm like, release the hounds, kind of like that feeling, like just release them all. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, just release all 50 episodes this week. I don't like, we have to start from scratch and figure this out. And this amazing thing happened, Jay. In other forms of content, and I can't claim this isn't a strategy I'm telling other people to do. I don't know that I've never seen anybody else do it, but our downloads not only went up, but our per episode downloads went up. And I was like, wow, there might be a market for this. And then it just kept on snowballing. So I just kept not telling people no. And last year we had over 30,000 applications to come on the show. And this year I'll do another 1,500 to 2,000 interviews. That's the synopsis.
That is unbelievable. How do you schedule to do, and by the way, to my audience, I know we talk about raising private money. This is the show where we talk about raising private money without ever asking for money. And of course, Adam, you've started your own fund on raising money. But for the sake of our listeners, I just want you to know on today's show, I want you to stick around for this show because we're going to dive deep on if you are an entrepreneur or you're a business owner or you're interested in, being a business professional. We're going to talk here in this show with Adam about why you need your own podcast, even if you've never thought about having your own podcast. And I will go ahead and give a spoiler alert. Adam's got a way for you to get it done very, very easily. So I'll just leave that little tickler out there. But so anyway, Adam.
I want to, Jay, really quick, just to add to that, just so they know the hook, there is a reason for you to, in raising money, to have a podcast. So when I didn't say no, that continued. All of these business lines, including the fund, came from people asking us, not from me asking them. So that it all relates to what you're talking about. Go ahead, please. I just wanted to throw that in there, that this isn't a marketing episode. We're going to talk about raising money.
I love it. And how you can use a podcast to raise private money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. So how do you do that many? And we'll dig into that here in just a second.
Yeah.
So how in the world do you do that many episodes? And how do you do that?
So I was, I think one of the big successes, I don't know if you remember that old book, The E-Myth. So sometimes when you enter a business which you don't know anything about, it's probably the best thing for you as an entrepreneur. So I knew nothing about media. So when I was initially creating the media side of this company and brand, and I decided to go full time into media, I designed it like a financial advisory practice from the back end to the front end and everything else. So even the company structure. So 50% of my time is in front of camera. The other 50% of the time is running the company as CEO and doing and holding that hat. And then I have each profit center has their own executive that have been CEOs in their own company, many of them funded companies, so that they can handle their segments of the business, whether it be PR, marketing, publishing, film, like all of these other profit centers. We have established executives in those fields that run those profit centers. So it's by structure, and really it's because I created it like a financial advisory practice. It runs like a finance company on the back end, not a media company.
Adam, you remind me of my dad, Wallace Connor, who, by the way, is 91 and a half years old. You don't remind me of him for that reason. But he was known and still is known as the 3D guy. And what in the world is the 3D guy? Dictate, delegate, and disappear.
I'm in.
Well, that's
take that one.
Yes, yeah. You are now officially the 3D guy, and so as you were sharing, just what you just said, as you were sharing, it reminded me of what I practice and what I
Mhm.
preach. And that is, do what you are the best at, do
Yeah.
what you really enjoy doing, do what you're the best at that's going to bring the most revenue to your company that you
Mhm.
enjoy doing, and let everybody and let everybody get out of the way and let everybody else do everything else. Do you subscribe to that principle?
I would say yes, but with a little caveat of definitely monitor. And not saying you didn't say to monitor, but definitely make sure that I feel that my job as CEO is to make sure that all of the departments are aligned. So this question, I got this from Walt Disney. So I didn't make up this question, but he made a lot of his decisions by saying, and based off of things I've read, I obviously, is this something Disney would do? Like, would Disney do this? Like, does this make sense for the Disney? He didn't use the word brand in any of his writings, but I use the word brand. So I constantly am looking through the lens of, would Mission Matters do this? Does this make sense for Mission Matters? So with that caveat, I definitely stay out of the way.
Yeah. So a little bit different question. Do you agree with the principle that you, as the person that's, running the show,
Hmm.
that you should spend most of your time doing what you enjoy doing the most and what is going to bring the most revenue to, like, you're spending half of your time,
Yeah.
recording.
Yeah.
Do you agree that you are doing that because, number one, you enjoy doing it, and it's the activity you do that's going to bring the most revenue?
I guess now we could look back in hindsight and say that, but that wasn't by plan. If we're going to the beginning, I was terrified to be in front of a camera, behind a microphone, behind anything. In fact, some of our earlier shows, like, I didn't even use my name. I was so scared. So I definitely grew into the role, grew into the position, but was I predisposed for media or books or any of that? I'd like to say that more so I chose what I felt that I could excel at the most, and then I worked just as hard at that part of the profession as I did when I was in finance, studying analysis, studying spreadsheets, studying company financials. Like, I take podcasting as serious as I took getting my CFP, my AIMS, my Series 7, my Series 6. So I take it with that same tenacity. So I'm gonna say that in retrospect, yes, I agree. Was that the original plan? I wish I had that type of foresight.
I got you. So, two-part question.
Mhm.
Do you really feel it's important for a professional, business owner, professional, ever how you want to define that, to start and have their own podcast? And if so, why?
So I found that it is the most user-friendly, easy way for a professional, especially in finance, to be able to communicate one to many. And for that one to many to feel like a one-on-one conversation. So I'll explain briefly. If you think about all of your communication channels, whether it's creating a blog, great. Some people like to write, but how hard is it to write a blog every week or to get that message out and to do all of these things? And when you get busy, very hard. I don't care how talented of a writer you are. It's very hard to stay consistent with that messaging. Same thing with, traditional social media, doing posts, all these other things, even just the approval side of things, of doing the distribution, very difficult to be consistent over time, which that's what you really need to be successful in whatever you're doing, whether it's raising money, whether it's your company, you're in something other than raising money or real estate or business. If you don't have consistency in the marketplace, then people aren't going to take you necessarily quite as serious. So what happens with the podcast is, this is the way I like to look at it. If I look at the old greats, so like the ones that I study, if you think about like the Bob Hopes, I just pull a lot from entertainment, but you don't have to be in entertainment. But the point is the Bob Hopes, the Johnny Carsons, all these other people that have been in entertainment throughout the years, at some point they retired or they stopped or whatever, because there was all this like time commitment, like the the technology didn't exist. The platforms didn't exist, right? Like you had all this work that you had to do. Now, the way I look at it is I'm pretty confident that if I'm fortunate enough to live to, your father's age, we're at 91, I'm going to still be podcasting, because what are the odds that I'm not going to want to do one call with one of my buddies or colleagues or somebody, my grandkids? I don't know if I have them one day, if I'm fortunate enough and blessed enough to have grandkids. What's the odds that I'm not going to want to have a call? And how hard is it to record it and distribute it? Easy. So you're going to have in this next generation podcasters in their 70s, 80s, 90s, centenarian podcasters. Why? Because this is just another form of communication. So if you think of it from that lens, I say, and this is rhetorical, I'm not asking you, Jay, but why wouldn't you have a podcast if you already know that? And especially if you're going to be in your business for any amount of time, if you're raising money, if you're in real estate, if you're raising money for other ventures, other things like that, for you not to have a podcast that can attract what you want to you, understanding that you're probably going to be in that business the next 40 or 50 years, why wouldn't you? Your catalog becomes enormous. Like, why wouldn't you? That's what I say.
Great question. Do you agree that having your own podcast lends itself to build the host credibility in general? Like, does having your own podcast help give the show host authority?
Let me give you an example. When I was in finance, so arguably I was, I managed a lot of money, had a lot of clients, right? I used to pay to get into the Milken Conference, which for those that don't understand what the Milken Conference is probably one of the top 3 conferences in the world, under Davos and some other things, like give or take, at least in the United States, for sure. It's one of the top conferences up there with SALT. Like these are like neck and neck. So just to give you an example, I just came from the Milken Conference. It might've been a week or 2 ago. Early May is when they do it. So depending on when you're listening to this, let me just give you an idea of some of the people that attend this and that were keynotes at this event. President Bill Clinton, Elon Musk, Beckham was there, will.i.am. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So when you talk about credibility, just what was I doing there? I was recording my podcast. Right. So like it went from me being, behind the, a regular attendee to now I'm behind the scenes. Now I have unusual access. So it's not just credibility. It's if you take your craft, serious, and if you build a catalog over time, what happens is you add another piece, another tool to your quiver that you didn't necessarily have. So not only do you get credibility, but you become the real deal. Because this is a service, like what you're doing today, Jay, by I have the privilege of you inviting me onto the show, is you're lending me your spotlight. You're lending me your platform. You are allowing me to come and share hopefully great content that can inspire your audience as well. So we're creating something here together. So yes, on the basic level, yes, it builds credibility, but there's so many more layers and just so much more and so many more reasons that build onto that point, but that are not fake. They're not contrived. They're not fake. They're not like fake media or this or that. It's more so like you're having an authentic conversation and you're letting others benefit from it. Like what can be more real than that?
So before we dive into how can you use a podcast to raise private money, and there's no one more qualified to talk about that topic because you're raising private money and you're the podcaster of podcasters. But before we dive in on that, what are the benefits of having your own podcast? So we just touched on one: authority, credibility, and what that entails. What are the other benefits of having your own podcast?
So I'll give you some of the top ones and top reasons. So just for context, so our company, I host over 8 shows. We also have a podcast network with over 31 shows we've launched. And as a company now, it's hard to believe, but we're going on launching 200 shows plus that we produced and launched, whether it was for companies, whether it shows that we own and produce and cultivate the hosts. So every different kind of dynamic you think there. And some of the top reasons, I'll kind of start from one of my favorite, because I'm just I'm just kind of getting into this part of it and this level of understanding. So the first one I'll say is legacy. We have a show right now. It's called the I Am Adopted podcast, and it's hosted actually by a father and daughter team. And in one of their latest episodes, they were, and by the way, the gentleman, his name is Gene, is the father. Just so you have an idea, he's been in real estate, raising capital. I mean, he's a lawyer. He's been doing this stuff since far before I was born. Put it that way. Like, and he's done a lot of big things. And what's the big? Jay, it's slipping my mind. The big designation for real estate, whether it's CMT, I can't remember, but he's one of the original teachers. So literally for like 30 years or however long that designation has been around, he's been teaching and a proponent of that. So he told me recently, and I brought them on my show, and he was talking about like, and his daughter brings this up, and he's like, Dad, you're not going to be here forever. And when you're not here, these episodes that we're recording together are super meaningful. Like, I'm going to be able to like listen to these later and still feel like you're here. And so that hit me. Like, so legacy, the concept of like, I wish I could, my my grandparents are unfortunately no longer with us. I don't get to hear their voice anymore. I don't get to hear their stories, whether it was in business or otherwise. Like, I don't get to do those things. So legacy, like, what are you leaving behind for your family? What are you leaving behind for your work? Like, for your kids, for your grandkids, otherwise. Like, I'd say one of the big one that's been on my heart lately is legacy. Business is the obvious one. When you have a platform, the more reach, the more distribution you have. That's going to especially if you're creating any type of content that's in the same realm as your business. So real estate podcast, raising money, if that's your focus, raising money podcast. And one quick myth I'd like to dispel real quick, because I know some people are thinking this right now. The podcast market's saturated. There's so many podcasts. There are no podcasts. There's, just for perspective, over 150 million YouTube channels, right? There's only like 3 million podcasts. So if you think about it that way, we're in like year one of podcasting. I tell this to people all the time. We're like literally in year one of podcasting, even though it's been around for a long time. So just understand that at some point, whether it's in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever the amount, there's going to be 100 million podcasts. So if you understand that and you follow that trend, then think about it like this. Right now, there's only 3 million. So now's the time. Like, start your show, get your catalog. So legacy, business is a given. Personal brand, we already talked about that, but that would be my trifecta. Personal brand. There's a lot of people, I'll just cap this pretty quickly, but there's a lot of people out there that are the real deal in their professions, Jay. They've got 10, 20, 30 years of experience, and yet, who's eating their lunch? People that don't have maybe their qualification, their experience, but have bigger brands online. So, why? Because they're getting found. People go on LinkedIn, they search XYZ and they find them because they have a platform and a big podcast and all these other things. Guess who they call? That person. And that's the same way we all make shopping decisions, is kind of like what's in front of us, what looks the best, and then you do your vetting. But that's going to continue to happen. So for those that feel that they don't need a personal brand or don't work on a personal brand, in whatever way they do it, by the way, you don't have to, but not having a personal brand is a personal brand, just so you're aware.
I love what you just shared about legacy, and I can't believe I haven't thought to do this until right now. From you sharing legacy, I'm going to have my dad, Wallace.
I can't
Conner,
believe you have not had him on yet. I want to have your dad on. I want to talk about the 3Ds.
I know, exactly. Well, I've had him at my live events. He's been at my live events, and I've interviewed him on stage. And speaking of legacy, I have got this now DVD. I still have a DVD player, but I've got this DVD of me interviewing my dad at the live event. And you know what we did, Adam? We took that interview, that 45-minute interview of him being on stage with me, got it transcribed. I hired an editor, and he is now a published author on Amazon. And last year for Father's Day, we gave him his book that he had written that he did not know he had written.
Stop. Oh
I
my
mean,
gosh. See,
m-
I
isn't
wish
that
I had the
amazing?
foresight to do that. That's amazing. And that's life. That's what it's about. Like at the end of all of this, we're thinking about, and I have these conversations with my peers often. I have a unique perspective from the standpoint that I started when I was 16 in the money management field. So I literally went to high school like 2 hours a day. Then I went to the brokerage firm. So I started pretty young. Obviously, I wasn't licensed at 16, but I was working in the IRA department. So I spent a good portion of my life with people that are, between the age of 70 and 90, like a good portion, because I worked so hard in what I was doing when I was managing money. So I'll tell you, as we get to our older ages of those ages, nobody's looking at just how much money they got in the bank. They're looking at their experiences. They're looking at their quality of life. They're looking at their family, like the things that matter. So how to podcasting and all this work into it, like that's what matters when we get up there, and money is just a thing, like another zero, another whatever. Great, but that's what's important and that's what's interesting. Thank you for sharing that with me, Jay. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the question to you, Adam, is who do you want to interview, transcribe, edit it, and make them a published author? In fact, I think you
That's
already do
interesting.
that.
Yeah, well, we've published over 400 authors now, and we've been working on that. And we started in book publishing even before the podcast. But I think I have to get my mom some more stuff now. Now that that when you said that story, I'm like, I got to get my mom more into it. She's a ham too. Oh my gosh, I can't,
Is that
I can't deal with this. She's got
is that
10
is that
times
where
my
you is that
energy.
where you is that where you got your hamness from?
Oh, I'm a tenth of what she has. She's a whole nother level, Jay. If she was on your show right now, she would have already cracked like 20 jokes on you, and you'd still be catching up.
Hey, I tell you what, you tell
That's
your
her
mama I
style.
want to have her. You tell your mama I want to have her on my show. Now I'll tell you another big benefit that I have
Mm,
that I didn't even anticipate. I did not even
mm,
anticipate. And then I'm going to ask you after I share this, I'm
yeah.
going to ask you to answer the question with
Yep.
step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do you raise private money by having your own podcast? But I want to share this.
Mm,
One big benefit of having your own podcast. Here's what I did not anticipate:
mm.
the relationships that I have
Oh.
been able to build
Mm,
and nurture and grow. I met them, either I was a guest on their podcast or they were
yeah.
a guest on my podcast. For example, I had Tim Hubbard on my show,
Mm,
this very show. By the way, he would be a great person for you to interview. Anyway,
mm,
so Tim Hubbard, and the long and short of it is, he is a virtual short-term rental manager. He's got
mhm,
properties he's got 70 different properties in, I don't know, multiple countries. He lives in Spain or somewhere. So he
mm,
virtually manages. So people started saying, "Hey, can you manage my Airbnb? Can you manage my,
mm,
you know?" So, and so he doesn't charge 15, 20, 25%. He charges 10%. He does it
wow.
all virtually. He does all the marketing. He's got the software for the pricing. And if you got a short-term rental, all you got to
Mm,
do is have the local person that turns it over, and he tells you how to find that person. So guess who is
yeah.
managing my short-term rentals now, right?
It's amazing.
You know, just from the relationships. All right, let's dive in the amount of time we got left, which isn't
Yep.
much. How do you raise private money by having your own podcast?
So, a couple of things. If first off, if you have a show, I host 8 different shows. So I just want to be clear for everybody that is considering it and maybe they want to start a podcast specifically to raise money. First thing is you want to start a show that's in your niche. So whether it's real estate or otherwise. So that's the first thing. Whatever the kind of like the niches that you want to go after. The second thing is when you're creating the actual show, you kind of want to think about the types of guests that you want to bring on. So you want to have your avatar, so to speak. Like, are you going to be targeting, just to give you a couple of examples, are you going to be targeting, and what I mean is as guests, are you going to be targeting, let's just say, I know one individual who he's a doctor, and he had to give you some specific examples. He's a doctor, and he raises money specifically from other doctors. So his entire podcast, he's interviewing other doctors and talking to them about real estate and real estate deals. So now if you think about the guests that he's bringing on, he's got people that are very like him, they're doctors. So there's a certain level of trust there already. People that are interested in real estate, people that are, so he's talking about their deals, he's talking about his deals. And what's happening is he's building a community around this. And so him raising money becomes pretty natural because they're already having the conversation. Because what it comes down to, and for those that have been in the game for a while, you realize there's always more deals, there's always more money, there's always more opportunity. But you got to think about it like, how many people are you talking to? But not just how many people, but how many people that are targeted that actually match your avatar. So imagine using that same example, and let's just say that the doctor now is inviting, I don't know, the AC repair company entrepreneur. For him, that's a little bit broader. I'm not saying that that wouldn't be a great guest or a great story. And it's not saying, but it's not necessarily in his niche. Where is he going to have a higher percentage chance to grow his tribe or his community that is then going to lead to being able to raise capital? So you got to think about your guests. So just to kind of circle back, start a show in your niche that you actually care about, number one. Number two, think about your guests and think about who you're going to bring on. Number three, after you have those two, number three, think about your distribution and get ahead of that. And I don't mean just like, is it going to be on Apple? Is it going to be on Spotify? Is it going to be on all those? I mean, think about your overall platform. So are you going to create a website around it that has maybe some ebooks or some other things that are going to give tools on raising money? Are you going to have a URL that matches your podcast? Are you going to be building a business out of that? Or are you just going to be kind of more of and this is okay, by the way, a novice or part-timer or just kind of dabble? Like, you got to really assess like how far into this you're going to go. Because if you want to go far, I mean, some of these steps, this isn't rocket science, right? Get your branding down, get your show right, get your guest right. And then the final piece I would say to this is get your process down for how you're going to ask for money. So this, I think in most sales don't happen because nobody ever asks for the money, right? You got to figure out how you're comfortable and what makes you comfortable in asking for the money. So for me, I mean, I was a financial advisor, so I have no problem just asking like, hey, Jay, I got a deal, man. I need some money. I got a deal I'm working on. I'm short 2 million. You got money? Does somebody else have money? Like, help me put this together. I'm okay doing that. Not everybody's okay doing that, but it's okay. You could follow up with your guest and you could have them on a newsletter. That's very passive. You could have a newsletter that just provides information and education and maybe some deals that you're raising for. That's one way to do it. And I would recommend doing that as well, in addition to what I said in the first place, which is just simply ask. Another thing you can do is when you're actually booking the guest, you can ask them a question in advance and you can have a question planted like, hey, we have some real estate deals coming up, or we have some deals. Would you like me to provide you with more information, or would you like me to get their opt-in to even being asked before you even do the interview? But the main thing here is the last piece of it, and this is where I feel so many individuals don't necessarily succeed with this strategy, is they don't get a process down. So that process can be, and I'll give you our process, by the way, just so you know, they're not holding anything back here. We do a combination of all of them, depending on the show, depending on the product. So number one, when somebody is intaked onto the show, there's a question, whatever that particular question is. It's kind of like an opt-in. Do they want more information on something? In this case, let's say raising money. If they say yes, guess what? That's our permission. After the interview, if there's a deal that I'm really hot on, or if there's something else, like, I'm just going to ask them like, hey, I noticed you said this, like, hey, do you want more information? Like, love to set up another call. all they could say is yes or no. If they say no, great. I'm not going to bother them. It's okay. Like, you can get plenty of no's, no big deal there. You're already getting no's without a podcast if you're active in this business. So I'm not worried about that, and you shouldn't be either. But now after that, we also have a newsletter that's pretty active. We're sending between 1 to 2 every single week. And I just looked at our stats literally this morning, and we're about to hit our 300th edition of our newsletter. So when we're doing that, we're not just asking people for things. We're providing value. We're providing the episodes that we create. We're providing all the content that we do. All of that's free. And then in that, there's going to be interspersed different things like events. There might be a deal. There might be a webinar. There might be a lot of different things, just depending on what the strategy is at that moment. But if you just do those things, and then if you're consistent over time, like, that's the key. Like, if you just start and you think all of a sudden, oh, I start a show or I start this. If you just start anything, like anybody that started a new business out there, that's like, hey, I got a new business, everybody line up and give me your money. Some people maybe that worked for. That didn't work for me, Jay. I don't know. But just think about it like just as a serious thing, and make your 5-year plan, make your 10-year plan, set your goals. I'm working with a new podcaster, and this will be my last point, Jay. I'm working with a new podcaster, and this guy, he is a rock star. His name is Zohar. He's 15 years old, and his dad's been my friend for many, many years, Dr. Ben Shamoyle. And he saw what I was doing in podcasting, all these other things. And I'm like, he calls me once in a while. His dad will be on the phone and we're all talking. I'm like, all right, Z, give me your numbers. Not kidding you, Jay, this kid, oh my gosh. He's like, all right, Adam, I'm at 33 podcasts for the year, or it might have been 43. I forget. 33 for the year. I have 4 more scheduled, and I'm on pace to hit 100 this year. Like you said, I need to do at least 100 this year, and I'm going to do it. Like that kid. That's how you do it. I was like, man, I hope he never asked that question back to me, to his father, Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben, man, I hope he never asked me that back, because I'm going to be like, oh, Z, I'm sorry, I don't have my numbers right. Let me. I don't have my dashboard in front of me.
Oh, mercy. Now, one thing you did mention in passing a few minutes ago, I want to make sure our audience understands and hears this. In addition to podcasting and et cetera, you also have a publishing and book marketing company. You mentioned you've published, hundreds and hundreds of
over
books,
400. It's crazy.
Over 400 books for and you probably have a done for you method in doing that for them and helping them. So if you're listening to this show and you want another layer of authority and credibility, Adam and his team can actually help you publish your own book and get it done pretty quickly. So with that, Adam, thank you so much for joining me. How can the audience continue this conversation with you?
Yeah, the simplest way, it's Ask Adam Torres on all social media. There you go. It's Ask Adam Torres. If you go on Instagram, if you go on anywhere and you just put in Ask Adam Torres, X, Instagram, TikTok, doesn't matter. There'll be a link in the bio that has direct contact to me. It's our link tree, and you'll see everything, including we have free ebooks. You want to know how to start your own podcast? We have a free ebook on there. You want to know how to write your best-selling book? We got a free ebook on there. You want to connect directly with us? There's contact forms in there. So lots of free stuff, lots of information there for you. So just check us out at Ask Adam Torres on any social media.
And that's Ask Adam Torres, Torres is the spelling. And of course, all this is going to be in the show notes. Adam, thank you so much for joining me, and God bless you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jay.
You got it. There you have it, my friend. Another amazing episode with another amazing guest of Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Conner, your host, and I'm looking forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Raising Private Money.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/money guide. That's JCONNER.com/money guide. And download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/money guide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.